We had a lot of fun collecting those. And there's going to be a different one each week as we kind of go through some of the tweets that we found on parenting over the years on Twitter. And so just make sure you don't miss any of those. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. So as I got thinking a few months ago about, we always try to do a parenting series every year. And so I'm like, man, what can we do this year that's going to be a little different than what we did last year or the year before? And I got thinking about it. I came across one of these tweets, and I just started laughing. And I thought, you know what? That to me is the embodiment of the book of Proverbs, right? Like literally every proverb is a tweet, if you will. But now they're good, right? They're well done. They usually aren't political, but you read it and you're like, wow, it's the short, pithy statement that is just powerful and packed with wisdom. And I thought, man, that's what we should do. We'll just do a list of all these parenting tweets, and we'll pick 4 different proverbs that deal specifically with parenting issues, and that's how we're going to do it. So that's what we're going to be doing. So each week, we're going to just share with you one proverb, and then we're going to talk about that and how that relates to our lives and how especially as parents. Now, if you are not a parent, let me just put just a real caveat on this. If you're like, well, this is for parents, I'm going to check out, I won't be here for the next 3 weeks, I'll show up 4 weeks from now. Don't do that, because here's the thing. At some point in time, you may have children and you want to know these things. But even if you don't have children, let's say you're like a 14-year-old sitting there going, "Buh," you can hold your parents accountable. No, don't do that. But you can take these things, because what we're going to be talking about and how we're going to be talking about doing that is it's not just going to be for parents. It's you. You can take it and you can put it into practice in your life today, regardless of whether or not you have kids. So don't just check out. Don't just tune out. Engage with this, and we're going to walk through this. So we're going to begin with our very first parenting proverb tweet, and we're actually going to read it together, okay? It's Proverbs chapter 20, verse 7, and it says, let's read this together. The godly walk, okay, together means we all read it. Just in case you're wondering, so let's all read it together. The godly walk with integrity. Blessed are the children who follow them. Now that's an interesting statement, isn't it? He says, listen, the godly, the people who are trying to follow after God, the way that they walk is with integrity. And we'll talk about integrity in just a minute, but I want to hit the last part of that verse, because it says, their children who what? Follow them. So let me ask you a question. As a parent, how's your life going? How have things been going in your life recently? More direct, how are you walking? How are you living your life? How are you acting, behaving? How are you doing the things that you're supposed to be doing in life? Now, if you will, forecast your life forward a few years and see the destination, because every path has a destination. You know that, right? And so whatever path you're on, however you're walking, whatever you're doing, however you're living, however you're behaving or acting, there is a destination to that path. Now ask yourself, if your children are following you, where are they headed? They're heading in the same direction, down the same path, to the same destination that you are. So if you don't like the destination that your life is heading in, then not only is that something that's going to impact you, it's going to also impact your kids. Now see, that we don't like it when we kind of lay it out that way, because then we like it just to be about us and go, well, if I make mistakes, no big deal. But here's the thing. Every mistake you make, your kids are seeing. Now that doesn't mean that you need to be perfect, because let's be honest, we're not perfect. Can we just be honest about that? Can you all be honest and say you're not perfect? Is that okay? Good, because I felt really, kind of a little exposed up here when none of you are like, oh no, we're perfect, we're good. We've never done anything wrong. We've never lost our cool with our kids. We've never, done any of that. We've never done any of that stuff. We're perfect. No, we're not perfect, but that's not what God calls us to. When he's talking about integrity, he's talking about something a little bit different. But before I jump into that, I want to share with you what our big idea is for today. It's really, really simple. It's simply this: wherever you are going, your children are following. Wherever you're going, your children are following. And now this is a universal truth, I think, for the vast majority, if not all, of parents. We all want our kids to have it better than we have it, right? We all want our kids to be better than we are. We all want our kids to act better than we act. We all want our kids to have a better idea, a better relationship with God, a better relationship with their future spouse, a better relationship with their friends, a better relationship with the world around them. We all want that. We want them to experience that. But here's the nasty little truth. Unless you are moving in that direction, you will never be able to provide that for your children. Because wherever you're going, your kids are following right along behind you. And they're walking in the same path that you're walking. Now let's jump back to that word integrity, because that's really very, very important. And when we hear the word integrity, we typically think of someone with character and that type of thing. But I want to define it in its original context outside of an individual. Because the idea of integrity is simply this. Integrity is the state of being whole and undivided. When they talk about having built a ship, whether or not that ship has integrity means whether or not the water can get into it. In other words, does it have cracks? If it doesn't have cracks and it floats, then that means it has integrity. When they talk about a spaceship, a shuttle going up into outer space, they talk about hull integrity. And if there isn't hull integrity, it'll collapse in and on itself because there's no oxygen and there's nothing in outer space. And so the power with it will literally just collapse it if it doesn't have integrity, if there's cracks within it. And you really don't know if something has integrity until there's pressure on it. So when we think about this idea of, as individuals, walking in integrity, it means, are you whole? Are you undivided in your thoughts and in your actions? And when pressure comes, do you stay the same way? Because when everything's easy, and it's easy to do the right thing, it's easy, isn't it? It's not hard. It's like, well, listen, I had a really tough choice, and there was a wrong choice, and that was going to get me, put in prison. And there was a right choice, and that was going to get me a new job. And boy, it was really a hard decision for me, so I chose the right thing. That's just the way I am. Praise Jesus, right? No, integrity comes when the pressure's on, when the right choice is going to cost you something. And the wrong choice is easy. And that's when integrity shows up. So the Bible says, blessed are the godly who walk with integrity, and their children who follow after them will also be blessed. So I'm going to talk about 4 categories, 4 parts of your life that really make up the wholeness of your life, in which if you want to set your children up for greater blessing than you have received, if you want the blessing of God in your life to overflow into your children's life, that you need to learn how to walk with integrity. Again, I want to take perfection off the table because we're not going to be perfect. We are going to make mistakes. In fact, just quickly, those of you, let's have a moment of honesty, okay? How many of you this last week made a parenting mistake? How many would join me and say, yes, I made a... See, look around you. Look around. Those that don't have their hands up don't have kids. All right? It's just going to happen. That's just reality. But it's not about being perfect. It's about continuing to pursue the God who loves us. That's what integrity means. You are the same person whether the pressure is on or the pressure is off. And so we're going to talk about 4 areas. The first area is this. If you really want to have your children experience the greater blessings of God and you want them to end up in the right place, then you have to begin with integrity in your married life. You have to begin with integrity in your married life. Listen to this. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 4. Give honor to marriage and remain faithful to one another in marriage. God will surely judge people who are immoral and those who commit adultery. Now, I don't think I have to belabor this point. That's pretty clear, isn't it? Listen, marriage is something created by God. It's to be honored. It's to be upheld as this ideal, this thing that we're all supposed to strive for. And then he goes on, he goes, so if you break that marriage covenant, that is an integrity issue. That's a problem in your life. You need to fix that. You need to correct that. And here's the thing, if you make those choices, it's not this that the blessing of God is not going to be there, but there's going to be consequences for that. There's going to be hard consequences. And some of you, I know, you've gone through those consequences, whether it's choices that you've made or your spouse has made, and you go through those consequences. And there's pain and there's heartache. And so my challenge to you is to have integrity in your married life. Whatever it takes, have integrity in your married life. Be faithful to your spouse. You go, well, you don't understand my spouse. You're right, but you married him. Right? You said I do. So be faithful. You go, well, what about them? Don't worry about them because they're the ones that are going to have to stand before God before their behavior. But when it comes to you, be faithful to your spouse. But even bigger, he says, honor marriage. Marriage is not just some easy thing that you jump into and jump out of. Marriage is a sacred thing that God has created. God goes so far as to say, man, I hate divorce, and the reason that he hates divorce is that divorce hurts his kids. You and your spouse, if you know Jesus Christ, you're the children of God, but then you also have children, and those children are the children of God, and you know all the statistics when it comes to that, don't you? And the problems and the difficulties and the heartache that's there and how that works. You go, well, what if it's already done? If it's already done, then you still can honor marriage because here, let me just talk to you, those of you that are single parents. And you're like, well, hey, I'm single. I'm not married. I've got kids, or maybe I'm divorced and I've got kids. How do I do that? You can still honor marriage. You can still honor it in how you talk about it, how you live. You see, God says that marriage is this sacred thing. It's something that he created in the Garden of Eden. A lot of people nowadays are like, listen, marriage is something that the government created. No, listen, marriage is a good thing, so therefore the government could have created it, okay? That's just the reality. Marriage was created by God in the Garden of Eden, and God took one man and one woman, and he placed them in the Garden of Eden, and he says, listen, I've given you all of these things, and I want you to take it, and I want you to be fruitful and multiply, make it productive, make it better, grow it, do all these things. And he makes this interesting statement. He says, now the two have become one flesh. There's a very popular phrasing now when it talks about marriage. It says, oh, when you get married, you're intertwined. And that sounds great, right? Ooh, intertwined, like a braided rope. No. That's not what it means. That's not what God says. God literally says he takes two people and he fuses them, he merges them together to where they become one. The we is now capitalized on the me. The self goes away and it all becomes about us. And that's what marriage is. It's not intertwining so much as it is taking two and making one out of it. So much so that when the two are separated, it causes irreparable damage to both sides. That's what God says marriage is. And he uses this specific verbiage so that we can understand. It's about giving up ourselves. It's about merging into something new with that person that you've pledged your life, your heart, your soul, your future to. So how can a single person or a single parent honor marriage? Don't act like you're married if you're not. That's how you honor marriage. Don't act like you're married until you are married. I know that this is something that is very counterculture, okay? I get that. But marriage does not come with a free trial period. It doesn't work that way. When you connect with someone on that depth of a level, there's connection that takes place, and it causes harm when that connection is severed. So don't treat marriage as something that is unnecessary. If you're a single parent, wait until you've got that full commitment of marriage to take that step. Be an example to your children and show them that marriage is special and it's sacred and it's serious, and teach them that sex and living together outside of marriage, that those components are reserved for married couples so that you can have integrity. Because otherwise you're saying, this is what God says, but this is how I'm going to live because God understands. And that's lack of integrity, and it leads to division in their mind. So if you say you believe the Bible, then live with integrity in your married life, whether you're married or not, and honor marriage. Number 2, live with integrity in your family life. In your family life. You're like, isn't that the same thing? No, it is not the same thing. Let me just really quickly, I'm going to jump on a soapbox real quick, okay? So just bear with me for a moment. If you are married, the most important person in your life is not your children. You're like, oh, no, it's not. Your children are not the most important thing. Your spouse is the most important person in your life. The greatest gift you can give your kids is to love your spouse unconditionally and let them see it. It's the greatest gift you can give your kids. You're like, well, yeah, but my kids need me. Let me tell you something. Your spouse needs you too. And in fact, I know this is the dark secret nobody tells you anything about, okay? Just listen very carefully. Everyone, right here, if you've got kids, I'm going to share something with you that's going to break your heart. You ready? Especially you moms. Are you listening? Say yes if you're listening. Your kids are going to leave you. See? There you go. Your kids are going to leave you, right? It's all going to be over with someday, and then you and your spouse are going to be in the house all by your lonesome. You're like, that's a scary thought. I know. So make sure you keep the marriage exciting and fun and relevant, because that's what it takes to make a long marriage. So then family life's a little different. Listen to what the writer Paul says in Ephesians 6:4. Fathers, and by the way, pause it real quick, because I know every time I read this verse, I can see moms like, that's right, dads. It is not exclusive to dads. He's specifically calling out fathers, but moms do this too, okay? So listen, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way that you treat them. Rather, bring them up in the discipline and the instruction that comes from the Lord. The point that he's making here is bigger than just dads. It's the reason he calls out dads is because, let's be honest, it's easier for dads to do this, right? Dads can more quickly have that harsh tone and have that there's just reality to that. That's just really the way that it is. So that's real positive stuff there. But it's not exclusive to that. It's about parenting. And he says, listen, moms, you're not absolved from this. He says, don't provoke your children to anger. Don't sit there and poke on them until they lose it. Don't do things that causes them to react in a way, because you're supposed to know your kids. Now, there are certain things. We have 2 girls. They're both adults now, but especially when they were younger, there were things that we could do with one of them and not the other one, and vice versa. People have buttons. Do you know that? Yeah, you know that, right? They have buttons. There's things all you got to do is go, book. It's like, you go, wow, you really shouldn't get upset like that. Well, you push my button. I don't know what you're talking about. Because we know that. There are different personalities. And so what the writer is saying is, listen, understand your kids, know how you do it, and how you relate to them, how you engage with them. Don't make it something that causes them to react like a caustic reaction to you. So I sat down, and I actually asked Tracy to help me with some of these. And I thought, okay, I want to give a list, because when you hear that word provoke, it brings up an image, but I think it tends to not give us a fullness of it. So I wrote down a list of 10 ways that you can provoke your children. Now, this is not a list like, okay, good, parenting advice. How can I provoke my kids this week? This is more like to help you understand when it says provoke your kids, what it's talking about, okay? You can write it down if you want to. They're not on the screen. Number 1, break your promises. If you want to provoke your children, break your promises. Tell them you'll do something, never follow through. And then keep promising and never follow through. Make your promises and break your promises. That will provoke your children to have a response. Number 2, be disingenuous. Be disingenuous. And I initially had put, don't speak the truth, but I think it's more than that. It's be disingenuous. In other words, you kind of act a certain way, but you really don't mean it. You kind of treat them a certain way, but you're just doing it because you know you have to do it. You're not being genuine. You're not being authentic in your relationship with them. So be disingenuous. Number 3, disregard their concerns. Disregard their concerns. When they bring something up to you that is fearful to them or bothers them, tell them, get over it. And ignore it and move on. Don't address it. Don't talk about it. Don't have a conversation with them. Just disregard their concerns. Number 4, be hypocritical. Say one thing and do completely the opposite. So tell them, listen, you need to obey the rules. You need to obey the law. You need to do what's right. And then when you're in the car with them, going to school, and you get pulled over for going 45 and a 25, and the police officer walks up to your window and says, "Sir, ma'am, do you know how fast you were going?" And you say, "No, I have no idea how fast I was going." And they're sitting in the back going, "She did too. We heard her say, 'Oh no, I'm going 45.'" Right? Be hypocritical. Number 5, unnecessary harshness, especially when it comes to discipline. Overreacting in anger and go, it's like they spill the milk and you pull out the shotgun. Right? It's like, unnecessary harshness. Number 6, the opposite of that, don't discipline at all. Do you know that if you do not discipline your children at all, and I'm talking about discipline, training, coaching, teaching them how to live, if you don't do any of that, that as well provokes them to anger? Number 7, show favoritism. Show favor. Well, I like her better than I like you, therefore that's why she gets. Show favoritism. Number 8, antagonize. Relentlessly pick on them. Especially in public. That's a good one. Especially when your daughters get to be about 12 years old. Make sure you pick on them in public. And when your boys get to be about 14, 15, make sure you pick on them in public. That's going to go over very well. Number 9, belittle their interests and dreams. Tell them how stupid they are. I mean, come on, you're never going to be that. Belittle them. Number 10, ridicule their friends. Their friends come over and they play, and then when they leave, make fun of their friends and tell them how stupid those friends are, and I'll just ridicule their friends. So that's the 10, right? Break your promises, be disingenuous, disregard their concerns, be hypocritical, unnecessary harshness, don't discipline at all, show favoritism, antagonize, belittle their interests and their dreams, and ridicule their friends. And I threw one more after Tracy left the room in. If you really want to provoke your children to anger, buy a cat. That one's for free. Okay, so to be a good example, to be whole and undivided, you've got to have integrity in your married life by honoring marriage. You've got to have integrity in your family life by not provoking your kids. Number 3, you have to have integrity in your relational life. You have to have integrity in your relational life. The Proverbs we're about ready to read is one of my top 5 proverbs of all proverbs. Proverbs 26, 18 and 19. Like a maniac shooting flaming arrows of death is one who deceives their neighbor and says, "I was only joking." Do you have that friend that does that? They're an absolute jerk to you. They're like, I'm just kidding. And you're like, I want to punch you in the face right now. Because what they're being disingenuous. They're not being honest. They are doing everything that they can to shoot you down, to cause you to stumble, to make you look poor or bad or under whatever. And they're doing all of that intentionally, but then they cover it up with, I'm only kidding. And the writer of Proverbs goes, that person is like the maniac sitting on top of a building shooting flaming arrows of death. I just love that. Flaming arrows of death. A maniac and flaming, that's a good name for like a punk rock band, right? Maniac and flaming arrows of death. But that's the picture, isn't it a great picture of what it's like to have somebody like that in your life? So here are 3 things. I'm just going to share with you 3 things about your relational life. Number 1, how you treat your friends shows your kids how they should treat their friends. How you treat your friends shows your kids how they should treat their friends. So if you have a friend over and then the minute they leave you start trashing them with your spouse, then you're showing them, hey, be one way to them and another way when they're not around. if you treat your friends disloyally. In other words, you find out something that's going on in their life, and to your other friend, you begin to share the intimate details and secrets, and you gossip about them. You are demonstrating to your kids, this is how you treat your friends. So that's number one. Number two, the type of friends that you choose is the template that they'll be looking through for the type of friends that they need. Now, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but how many of you have a friend in your life that you go, if my son or daughter ever has a friend like this, I will make them disappear? Because this friend is no good, no bueno, they need to be gone. Like think about that. If you have these friends in your life, your kids are going, oh, that's the type of friend I should have in my life. And so even if they're little, they'll begin to look for friends that mirror the friends that you have in your life. So the friends that you have, do you want them to be in your kids' lives? If not, then you may want to reconsider some of the friends that you have. Third one is this: the depth of friendships that you have will set the level of the depth of friendships they look for. So if you have deep, meaningful friendships and relationships, your kids are going to go, man, I want that. If you have shallow, surface level, no real genuine care, it's just kind of then that's what they're going to expect, and they're going to say, that's what I'm looking for, that's what I should have. And so not only how you treat your friends, not only the type of friends, but then even the level or the depth of the level of friends will demonstrate to your children, this is the type of relational life you should have, and they will follow after you. So all right, we've got integrity in married life, we've got integrity in family life, we've got integrity in relational life, and finally the last one, integrity in your spiritual life. Integrity in your spiritual life. James chapter 1, verse 22, it's a verse we actually use a lot around here. In fact, if you're locked out of one of the computers, here, if you're working, you're doing volunteering, it's probably the password. James 1:22, all right? James 1:22 says, but don't just listen to God's word. You must do what it says. Otherwise, you're only fooling yourselves. Over the years, I've had far too many heartbreaking conversations with parents because their kids have walked away or run away from God. Now, although what I'm about to say is not 100% true, the large majority of these parents were or are guilty of not having integrity in their spiritual life. And again, that's not 100% always the case, but far more than not, that's reality. They demonstrated a lack of spiritual integrity, and so their children just that's how they live their lives. And when their spiritual life became inconvenient, difficult, or a drag on what they wanted to do, it was abandoned because it wasn't necessary. When we're inconsistent in our spiritual lives, it leaves our children confused, overwhelmed, and uncertain at a time when they're looking for that which is real and solid and important. If as a mom or a dad, you say, man, God's the most important thing in my life, and I love God, and I want to be used by God, and I want to serve God, but then you take that God that you say that you love and you want to serve and you want to be used by Him, and you use His name as a swear word within your home and within your friends. Or the commands that He gives you take lightly or ignore altogether. Or you say, listen, you believe one thing, but then you practice and you live another thing. That says lack of integrity in your spiritual life. It gives them confusion. It causes them to question. It causes them to lose respect and honor for you as a parent. Being and having integrity in your spiritual life doesn't mean you're perfect. I want to keep reiterating that because a lot of times we walk away, we're like, oh, I just can't live up to that. God's not asking you to be perfect. You will, listen, I love all of you, but you will never be perfect, okay? That's just reality. In fact, if you need to, if you're sitting with your spouse or someone that you love or your significant other, and you need to just look at them and say, you will never be perfect. Just really quickly, just to kind of get that, you'll never be perfect, okay? You're just not going to be. You don't even have to look at your kids and tell them that because they already know, okay? Listen, we're just not going to be perfect. That's not what God is calling for. What He's calling for is He's calling for us to be consistent, to constantly try to apply what God is teaching you through His Word. Your kids don't need and don't want perfect. If you were a perfect parent, that would destroy their ability to figure out how to work life. Because then they could be held to a standard that they could never live up to, and they would never be able to follow you. Sometimes your mistakes while you're pursuing God are some of the greatest teaching lessons that your kids will ever learn. And they'll go, okay, that's a path I don't want to go down. I saw what happened. Even mom and dad, they were trying to do the right thing, but they made a mistake. They corrected. We talked about it, and man, I'll never do that. I'll never walk down that path. But they do need a parent who's always moving forward with their walk with God. It builds a strong foundation for them to really grow, to try, and even if they fail, to know they can get back up and continue to pursue God. I love how James ends this verse. He says, you're only fooling who? Yourself. Listen, your kids know. Don't think, we've got them fooled. No, you don't. Unless they're like an infant, you don't have them fooled. They are watching you. Everything you do, everything you say, when they're in the back of the car singing whatever ridiculous song the kids that age are singing at this point in time, they are watching you, they are listening, they are absorbing it in. They are like little sponges, and they'll never forget anything. Ever. Except to load the dishwasher. That somehow doesn't stick. But they're watching you. You're not fooling anybody. You think you're doing it, but you're not. Not only are they watching you, they're taking their cues from you. Your behaviors, your attitudes, your actions, your conversations. You are literally building a framework within which they're going to live their lives. You're actually putting the outline together for within which they're going to live inside of. And God is calling us as parents, us as people, to live with integrity, to walk with integrity, to be consistent, undivided, and whole. To be the same no matter where you are, no matter what pressure comes on you, no matter who you're with, to honor marriage, to not provoke your children or give your kids a reason to be angry, to have and to be a great and loyal friend, and to love Jesus passionately even when it's not perfect. And when we do this, the promise of God begins to flow over us like a waterfall into our children's lives because we walked with integrity before God, and He blessed our children because they followed after us. Because wherever you're going, your children are following. Father, we thank you so much.